News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and YouTube and Blip TV and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not, no retribution. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. Chris Toensing, Toensing, Executive Director of the Middle East Research and Information Project. The guest, the first caller, is Cassandra. She's joining us from the United Kingdom. Cassandra, welcome to News Talk Online on the Paltalk News Network.
Thank you, Gary, and hello, Chris. I'd like to sort of concentrate not just on the micro issue of Egypt, but upon the macro issue of what's happening in the Middle East. We're seeing this. A couple of years ago, it was in Iran with the Green Revolution. It was in Tunisia. It's in Egypt now. It's in Yemen. We've seen a regime change in possibly in Algeria as well. Yes, and we've seen a regime change in Lebanon. There seems to be this huge change that's happening, this huge revolution that's happening. But what I would like to ask you, Chris, is should the West be interfering in this? Should we be interfering and putting our stamp and our views in on this? Look what happened when we interfered in Iran and the consequences of that. Look what's happened when we've actually I was going to say interfered, when we have intervened in Afghanistan and the results of the elections there that were far from sort of honest and upright and necessarily free. Do we not need to take a step back, or can we not afford to take a step back, Chris? Thank you.
Great question. I think the first thing to realize is that for many years now, decades, since the United States has been the preeminent power in the Middle East and then the world's sole superpower, the U.S. de facto intervenes every single day in this sort of large-scale clash between the repressive states of the region that are allied with the United States and the repressed peoples of the region. And that intervention has come in the form of massive military aid. If we take Egypt as an example, Egypt has been the #2 recipient of U.S. foreign aid since 1979. Almost every year it has been. And we're talking in the order of billions of dollars now. And much of that aid, not all of it, but much of it is military and security aid that is used largely to contain domestic dissent. So the United States has been intervening. It's not a question of whether whether the United States should or should not intervene. It has been. And so the number one thing that the U.S. should do now is stop that type of intervention. If the U.S. goal is, as is always said by our leaders, that we would like to see greater democratization in the region, then the first thing to do is to stop offering this support for governments that are not democratic and are in fact anti-democratic. That's the first thing. So, and beyond that, some words of comfort or support for protesters, at least that as Obama did say to the Tunisian protesters, that in protesting for democracy and human rights, they're protesting for universal rights that we should all uphold. That only redounds to the good, I think, in the long run.
Well, there are a lot of people still waiting in queue to talk to you, but I so monopolized your time, Chris. We ran out of time, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell my audience that you are the editor and the publisher of the Middle East Report, and that's where the articles that the Middle East Research and Information Project produce that you don't see in the mainstream media. Chris Toensing, We really appreciate your analyses on this, and we'd love to have you back on again in the future.
Anytime, Gary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sam from Boston, welcome to News Talk Online on the Pal Talk News Network.
Thank you, Gary. Hello, everybody. Yeah, this situation kind of reminds me the elections the Palestinians had and how the Americans really pushed for democracy and for elections, and then Hamas got elected. I have the feeling that the same thing will happen over here. The Muslim Brotherhoods are sitting quiet right now, but there already reports that, like Chris said, that after Friday night prayers, they're going to come out to the street, and they are the real power in Egypt today. You have to, you have to look at Egypt as far as a population makeup, and how many from the percentage of the population, how many are actually intellectuals who really stands for the values that we think that they are protesting for. And I will have to argue that very, very few actually, because give you one indication, if you look at what the way that the Coptic Christians are treated in Egypt, I didn't see any demonstrations against what's going on with the Coptic Christians. I mean, think about it. Look at Iraq. Look at Iraq. America went there. And what is going on in Iraq? Ethnic cleansing of Christians from Iraq under the nose of the Americans. Okay? The same thing going to happen in Egypt also. Now, let me tell you something. What happened in Iran, at the Iranian case, when there were riots there, America should have get involved. That was the time, because the Iranian population is very different than the Egyptian population. The Iranian population is much more intellectual, much more educated than the Egyptian. The Egyptian population is over 80 million people, and most of them are what they call falahin, peasants. You know, a lot of them don't know how to read and write, and let me tell you, they are brought on hateful sentiments against America and against Israel. Anti-Semitism there is prevalent on official newspapers and so on. I don't really see much good coming out of this. And by the way, this domino effect, which started from Tunisia, I bet you the Saudis are shaking in their pants right now, and they're watching very carefully what's going on in Egypt, because they know.
Excellent point, Sam. They know. That's right, Sam.
It's going to come to them sooner or later.
Which is a big, big problem. A big, big, big problem for the Saudis. And for the United States by extension, because we have kind of a love-hate relationship, don't we, Sam, with the Saudis. Our next caller is Sonny. He's joining us from Egypt, and he's joining us from Germany, but he spends a lot of time in Egypt. Once a year, Sonny travels to Egypt, so he's got a little bit of a sense of the inner workings of what's going on there, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say. Sonny, welcome to News Talk Online on the Pal Talk News Network.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gary, and good day, world. Yes, Egypt is not Tunisia. We should not forget that. Egypt is absolutely different organized and strongly controlled by, of course, police, secret service, and the army. I'm going to Egypt since 22 or 23 years, sometimes up to 3 times a year. I called yesterday the German correspondent of the biggest TV here in Germany. He is living in Cairo and responsible or taking care of the whole Middle East. Dietmar Ossenberg. Used to work with him in Egypt too. And he was kind of surprised that this keeps going on so long. He was expecting that this will be finished after a day or two. He personally thinks, and so do I, that the government will, of course, use the police, Secret Service to calm this down, and I think they're very, very strong, and they should be and would be able to do that. I personally don't like that, but I see the reality as it will happen in that specific country. The Egyptians, there's a saying in Egypt, once you cannot eat or cannot afford bread anymore, then the government will be gone. So 80% of all foreign exchange in Egypt is put into subsidizing food. 80% of foreign exchange. So that's quite a lot. And, you know, the wheat comes from Canada and from America, for example. If not, there would be big, big problems in Egypt, even more than there is right now. I think there will be an end. Give it another week. There will be some changes done by the government, positive ones, you know, to give them a little bit of sugar, but that's it. I think it will go on like this, and the only question is, who will come after Hosni Mubarak?
Well, and let's just say that your predictions prove to be true. This is a wake-up call, not just to Egypt, but to the world. What kind of a transition will there be when Mubarak finally steps down, either forcibly or voluntarily or under natural circumstances? You know, maybe, I mean, he's getting old, maybe he dies. And what assurances will there be that whatever kind of transition there is will be to some kind of a moderate, somewhat democratic existence? And of course, the big question, and I've raised it several times during this show, Sonny, has to do with the Muslim Brotherhood. How strong are they, and how likely are they to attempt, if they see an opening, a weakness, a void, to fill it?
Oh, well, that's a different question. I mean, to answer that would take probably ages. The Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood, of course, is very, very strong in the country. I think personally that the government made a deal with them. So my Egyptian friends told me 2 years ago already that there is a deal between the Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Egyptian government, that they calm down, that they stay in the background, and the government will not attack them. In other words, will keep them, you know, alone. In other words, Mubarak's son might be the next leader of that country, but nobody knows him in the country. Mubarak is 81 years old. He's not very healthy. He has been to Germany for an operation. So there will be a change sooner or later anyway. I do not think it will be leading into a democratic direction. I personally think if there is any bigger problem coming up, then we have a military government there. Similar to Pakistan as it used to be, for example.
Similar to Pakistan as it is today. Come on. It doesn't appear to be a military dictatorship, but the military controls Pakistan. Thanks for that great analysis, Sonny. I'll be back at 5 o'clock New York time tomorrow for another edition of News Talk Online on the Pal Talk News Network. Until then, peace out.
This is the Pal Talk News Network.